You know, every successful business, and I mean every single one, eventually hits the same wall. The wild creativity that got you started suddenly feels like it's at war with the structure you need to grow. And you feel stuck, right? If you add rules, you're terrified you'll kill the magic. But if you don't, you risk total chaos. So, how do you actually grow up without slowing down? Let's get into it. Yeah, this is the question, the one that keeps founders staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. It's this deep, genuine fear that by creating structure, all you're really doing is building a bureaucracy that's going to strangle every new idea. It's a totally fair concern. But what if it's actually the wrong question to be asking in the first place? And this is where we need a little shift in perspective. It is not a choice between chaos and control. The best companies in the world, they just refuse to pick a side. Instead, they look at it like a design challenge. They intentionally build systems where process and innovation don't just, live together. They actually feed off of each other. So this brings us right to the heart of the matter, this paradox of growth. It's this classic tug of war that every single company faces when it starts to scale. Let's take a look at the two forces pulling on the rope. All right, so on one side of the rope, you've got control. This is your friend. It gives you efficiency, it gives you consistency, the predictability you absolutely need to deliver something people can rely on. But, lean too hard into that and you get totally bogged down in bureaucracy and slow decisions. And on the other side, that's all about pure creativity. This is where the magic happens, the experiments, the breakthroughs. But with zero structure, you just end up with chaos and a ton of wasted time and money. Okay, so if balance isn't quite the right word, what are we actually aiming for? The goal is structured flexibility. Think of it this way. You're not trying to build walls around your team, you're building a framework that actually supports them. The goal is to provide a skeleton, right? Not a cage. But before we can build that skeleton, we gotta figure out what usually breaks the bones in the first place. We have to diagnose the problem correctly. Because it turns out, the real villain here isn't process itself, it's the wrong kind of process. So what are these mistakes that so many companies make when they try to put some structure in place? Where does it all fall apart? Well, it almost always boils down to one of these four things. First, you've got over-standardization. That's when you make a rule for everything, and people just stop thinking for themselves. Then you've got approval bottlenecks, the black hole where great ideas go to die waiting for a signature. Third, and this is a big one, is a culture that fears failure, which just guarantees nobody will ever try anything bold. And finally, my favorite, process for the sake of process, just adding steps and friction that serve absolutely no real purpose. Okay, so we've identified the innovation killers. Now for the good stuff, the solution. We're going to look at this flexible framework, which is really just a smarter system for building processes that actually help you, not hurt you. First up, this idea of a minimum viable process. Now, if you're in the tech world, you know all about the minimum viable product. Well, this is the exact same concept, just for your operations. Don't try to build the perfect 100-page manual from day one. Just document the absolute bare minimum critical steps to get something done. Keep it simple, keep it lightweight, and plan to make it better over time. Next, I want you to think in terms of guardrails, not handcuffs. This is a game changer. Instead of a rigid step-by-step instruction manual, you define the destination and the boundaries. Give your team crystal clear objectives and a few non-negotiables, the stuff that absolutely positively has to happen. And then you get out of the way. You let them figure out the best path to get there. Look, real innovation doesn't just happen. You have to intentionally build a space for it. This means carving out these protected experimentation zones. I mean, think about 3M's famous 15% time. That's how we got Post-it notes. Or how Google's side projects gave us Gmail. These are sacred spaces where new ideas are judged on what you learn, not on whether they make money tomorrow. Let's make this real with a couple of big examples. Take Netflix, a perfect case study. They have incredibly robust, process-heavy systems for their backend, for content delivery, for data analysis. But they give their creative teams almost total freedom. Now contrast that with Kodak. They got so trapped by their super successful film processes that they completely ignore their own invention, the digital camera. And, well, we all know how that story ended. And hey, this isn't just a big company game. For a younger company, look at Spotify. They pioneered the idea of autonomous squads, these small, empowered teams that have a super clear mission. It's structure without the bureaucracy. And the alternative? Well, that's the chaotic startup we've all seen, where there are no processes at all and everyone's just constantly firefighting, which leads straight to burnout and a total failure to scale. Okay, that all sounds great in theory, But how do you actually do this in your own organization? Let's get super practical with a straightforward 5-step plan you can literally start using today. All right, step 1, first you got to figure out what actually needs a process in the first place. Focus on the repetitive, essential stuff. Step 2, classify those tasks, because not everything needs a strict rulebook. Step 3, define your absolute non-negotiables. Step 4, you have to build a system for feedback so your processes don't get stale. And finally, step 5, and this is crucial, you actively encourage people to make smart deviations from the plan. Let's double-click on that second step for a sec, classifying tasks. This is so important. Look, for something that is both repetitive and absolutely critical, like financial compliance, yeah, you need a strict standard operating procedure. No wiggle room. But for something that's repetitive but also needs a human touch, like customer onboarding, loose guidelines are way better. And for something totally creative and always changing, like a new marketing campaign, you get rid of the SOP altogether and just focus on clear goals. And that leads us to the final piece of the puzzle. And honestly, it might be the most important one, your culture. You want to build a place where an employee feels totally empowered to come to you and say this. This isn't about breaking rules just to break them. It's about making intelligent choices to improve the outcome. And then, this is key, sharing that learning so the whole system gets smarter. All right, let's bring it all home. If you walk away with just one idea from all this, I want it to be this core metaphor. So here's the bottom line. It's true. Badly designed processes will absolutely crush innovation. But you know what kills it even faster? Total chaos. Constant firefighting, wasted effort that burns people out and kills creativity just as dead. Neither extreme works. So your job as a leader is to build highways, not cages. Think about it. Highways provide structure, they provide a clear direction, and they enable incredible speed. Cages just trap people. Good processes are the highways that get your team where they need to go faster and more safely, but still give them the freedom to choose their lane and how fast they want to go. So I'm going to leave you with a question to think about. Forget about building some giant, complex system of rules for a minute. Just ask yourself this. What's the single biggest bottleneck on your team right now? What is the first, simplest highway you can build to clear the way for them?